So, esteemed colleagues, it's my great pleasure to present you this morning some reflections on an issue which is of major and increasing importance to us, both in societal systems, but also in public health and also in higher education. This is the concept of resilience. And I have to apologize for coming from a more European perspective than a worldwide perspective, but maybe we can broaden the focus a little bit in the later discussion. I would like to start with a brief definition, which is in accordance to a publication of social psychologist Charlie Edwards, consisting of 4 indicators, which are most important criteria for the capacity of a system to act, respectively react on a resilient level. The first indicator is robustness, which means that the system is capable to withstand stress and external threats. Second, there is redundancy, which means that there are existing alternative options for making the system work, even though some parts of it are failing, comparable to the human brain. There is resourcefulness, which describes the ability of a system to respond creatively in the occurrence of damage, which means that there are many resources which can be used in alternative to the ones which do not work any longer. And there is rapidity, which is also very important for a resilient system, which means that there can be a rapid response and regeneration capacity of a system under threat and in crises. I would like to take a look at both teaching and learning, research and innovation, and governance with respect to this category of resilience. And teaching and learning, I will reflect a little bit more with respect to our experiences under the conditions of pandemia during the last 2 years, research and innovation in a more broader, in a comprehensive perspective. And the same counts for governance. So I think many of us have learned that the teaching systems have proven sustainable and resilient because more than 90% of classes could be delivered online. Even in fields as engineering or natural sciences, which require a lot of hands-on experiences in the labs, it was possible to replace the teaching formats from the classroom by virtual means, and teaching on a digital basis was possible, much better possible than we all would have predicted and expected 2 or 3 years from now. The 2 years were not lost, neither for the students nor for the teachers, and they offered a lot of opportunities to readjust teaching and learning conditions. We all have learned that digital formats have enormous potential for a greater variability in presentation forms. And we also have learned that creative interruptions are very important. This is an experience we all made also in analogous teaching formats, but in the field of virtual teaching, we all have learned that it's very boring to present just one way. It's very important to have breakout sessions or chats to interrupt and to make the session a little bit more reliable. New forms of interaction and group work have come up, for instance, via Etherpad and other technical tools. So in general, we also face a new climate. There is an enormous openness, an increasing openness to didactic experimentation. There is a high innovation dynamic during the whole system because we are forced to adapt ourselves to changing instruments and to learn, if we are teachers, to learn from week to week. And one side effect might be that there were hierarchies dismantled, they were reduced in relationship between teachers and students, because the new challenges forced us to react quickly, and young people usually are able to adopt new challenges much better. And this was the reason why we all considered teaching as a joint digital workshop, which entailed a lower degree of hierarchies than before. What are the problems? First of all, some teachers were overburdened, they were overwhelmed by the use of new technologies. Both students and teachers spend too much time in front of the screen, and there is a lack of direct exchange. And there are also some legal uncertainties in many countries concerning the legal environment for digital examinations, which haven't been solved yet, for instance, in my country, in Germany. And there are, last but not least, also technical problems. We heard from them, from these problems. So we heard about Africa, we heard about many countries which could not cope with the challenges given here because of a lack of technical opportunities. And this also counts particularly for poorer students. Generally, teachers and learners were complaining about a loss of authenticity. There is the fact that learning scenarios could not completely be replaced by virtual tools, even though I've stated before that even in technical fields, it was handleable, it was possible to simulate experiments. It never really replaces the full spectrum of experiences you can make in a lab directly. And the same counts for consultation hours and exchanges via chats, which cannot really replace direct communication. I think what we can learn from the last 2 years is, first of all, there is a culture of presence which cannot be completely replaced. There is a need for it, not only for freshmen and freshwomen, for first-year students, but for the full range of students, also for master's students. Beyond this, I think we need an openness for hybrid solutions. Overview lectures, for instance, can be held online, or they can be combined. They can be attended in the audience, but also can be streamed with respect to the different capabilities of students. Some are good learners very early in the morning, others late at night, so they can flexibly take use of these new streamlined lectures. So I think here a hybrid format is very appropriate if the university has the technical tools. In seminars and exercises, I think there must be blended learning formats. The most important issue here is how to combine them with respect to didactic aspects, but also to technical requirements. And I think we need, finding which is true to many of our institutions, we need better digital support structures, and they must be extended in the future. So I think in general, what this type of blended learning culture is really helpful for is that it is enabling us to flexibilize the lessons and also to reduce the size of a seminar. If we send a subgroup into a virtual classroom for 1 week and it enables the rest to discuss in face-to-face communication in a smaller group then, this is very helpful. And to summarize this, I would say resilience here is created through a flexible, appropriate, and didactically variable form of teaching and learning by combining virtual and analogous tools. What will the future of teaching and learning look like? Final questions. I think teaching should be more considered as a process, as an open process, which also requires participation of both the teachers and the learners to be developed on a very high qualified level. A synthesis of different models must be state of the art in the future. On-site and online elements must be considered as real productive complements, not as parallel systems, but as different modes of teaching, which also demand different cultures and techniques of teaching. And resilience here arises through adaptability, which is a very important hallmark of a quality-based system. I take a look at research and innovation now, considering the university as a system of multiversity, which is a quote from Clark Kerr, who delivered a speech in Harvard in 1963 saying universities are in most cases multiversity because they have to organize this multitude of disciplines, of approaches, methods, people, identities, cultures into one form, one unity. And this is the organizational task of a university, to take advantage of multitude of different perspectives and to also bring this into a coherent model. I think the wealth of university is given by the richness of its subjects, and they are much richer than a singular science system as an institution, which is just focusing on one or two disciplines. Complementary is a principle here, and there's also diversity, which means there is an enormous potential. Both complementary and diversity are not given. They have been considered as challenges, and the institution must take advantage of both the complementary structure and the diversity. In terms of research, we consider a lot of hurdles here. We face a lot of hurdles here. The system is blocking the potential of plurality, for instance, by organizing the disciplines in isolation, by competitive thinking, which is a very important issue, not only for the executive board, but particularly for the executive board, which is oriented on the 3 R's: reputation, resources, rankings. And this makes the institution considering itself primarily as a competitor, not as a collaborator, which is important to take advantage of diversity and richness of the system. There's a lack of understanding of other subjects. In many institutes, people are just focusing on their task, not being interested in what the others are doing and the other fields. And there are certain organizational structures which are really outdated but are still existing on many campuses, which are preventing collaboration, strictly separating the respective institutes from each other. Diversity, on the other hand, is a real issue and is given in many fields. There is an enormous variety of collaborative forms in research. There are many projects which are overcoming the borders and hurdles between the respective disciplines. They are doing networking, and project work is bringing people together. Here, there is a broader understanding of the achievements of other disciplines through problem orientation and also in shared interests in solving problems. There is teamwork as a genuine principle of scientific work, not only in science, but also in my field, humanities, which is still focusing very much on individual performance, but also is taking advantage of collaborative formats already in many fields. Digital communication, we all know this, leads to a greater acceleration in the exchange of information. This leads us to open science, which is a format which really overcomes the thinking of competition and makes people in science more collaborative actors. If you have an experiment, if you fail in the same period in the same phase, one time to the other, you can share this with your community. You can ask people, your colleagues in either New Zealand or Mexico or Denmark, whether they face the same problem. Major publications are an important format. Actually, we are in a process which is really rapidly going on. Publications are not only presenting results, they are presenting questions. There is more openness. Openness brings us to collaboration and also minimizes this spirit of competition, which is still in the system, definitely. Rapid interaction also enables us to found more quick solutions and to consider research as a process, which it is definitely. And resilience is given here through a greater degree of openness in the system. I'll give you two examples from my field of experience, which show that also funding schemes can enable a larger spirit of openness. In Germany, we have set up the Excellence Initiative, Excellence Strategy, as it is entitled now, in 2005, which is funding transdisciplinary research approaches and funding so-called clusters of excellence, which had been a role model for many countries, as Spain, for instance, France, and also in other world regions. And there is the initiative of the European University Networks, which is inspired by the speech President Macron delivered at the Sorbonne in September 2017, which also offers an option for a better exchange, for an openness in exchange of both staff, students, and research ideas and projects, not only confined to the area of teaching. Finally, I want to look at the governance structures. We are facing also a process here. First of all, in universities, you have the administration and you have teaching, research as core fields. And usually they are not befriended areas. And actually we witness a move, a shift. There is a closer interaction between these spheres according to the requirements of digitalization. The difference between service and teaching and research is narrowing, because if service is needed in teaching formats, people who are doing the service must have experts not only in the technical field, they must have at least a comprehensive understanding of what is needed in teaching formats, and the same counts for research. For this reason, we look for new competence profiles. We are constructing new competence profiles in these emerging fields, which are intermediary ones, because we need people who are both informed in technical contexts, but also have an understanding of research processes in the respective field. So the same counts for the executive board. Controlling universities is less hierarchical than it used to be, because the difference between center and periphery is not that strictly given as it has been in the past. We have a more fluid interaction between these parts of the institution, also with respect to digitalization. But again, with respect to strategical thinking, universities have learned much better to shape their strategical perspectives, and this must be a joint endeavor. If it is a top-down mission, it won't work. And for this reason, I think we have this trend. It's not more than a trend, actually. It might not be shared as an experience by all of us, but I face this on the European stage in general. And the same counts for research and research support. I have mentioned this already. Both spheres are coming together through digitization, and the requirements which are given here. I think collaborative decision-making processes are a very important issue with respect to strategy, with respect to mission, but also with respect to the many tasks, to the increasing number of tasks universities have to fulfill. And structures are becoming more volatile and dynamic. The old institutional pillarization between different spheres has been overcome now, and there are more flexible processes, increasing the resilience of the system, so flexibility as an issue of resilience. There are still some desiderata. First of all, I think we need a better exchange between universities and non-university institutions, research institutions, but also industries focusing on research interests. And despite competition for funding, I think we need to enhance this spirit of collaboration in the area of different research institutions. So if there is a university and there is an institute focusing on, let's say, medical research, then we need more interaction, not only with respect to projects, but also with regard to attracting people and to recruiting people. And we get more options here by interaction, and we would also create resilience. We need the beginning of a wonderful friendship between these different spheres, and that's the reason why this famous movie here is quoted by the picture. I think in many areas of the academic system, innovation does not lead to savings effects. And this is one important insight you get when you're considering what is really needed in higher education. Politicians might expect that by means of digitization, we could save capacities, we could reduce the number of rooms, the number of people being in charge of a university. But this is not the fact. Innovation can lead to a reduction of costs, but in many cases, it does not lead to savings effects. It requires different savings models, and digital solutions are definitely not a savings model. We need the readjustment of our room structures, readjustment of expertise, and also responsibility. So the reorganization of the university under the conditions of digitization is ongoing, and we all know that this requires flexible financing, in many cases even more money than the old traditional system. And resilience in this case also comes from financial autonomy. It's not all about creativity and good ideas, it's also about money, as you all know. And I would like to close with a note on Mark Twain, who had said, "I love progress, but I hate change." And this is typical for our human brain, that we are living in this contradiction. And if we really want to make progress in the academic system and bringing it forward with regard to the requirements of the 21st century, I think we should start with ourselves and learning to love and not to hate change. Thank you very much. And now I think there's ample room for questions or remarks from your side. Please.
Thank you for a really interesting presentation. Thank you for a great presentation, Professor Alt. I represent Ukraine, and I have a question regarding the European University initiative. I mean, we are really interested to join, to become part of wider Europe generally, and in particularly of university community. And my question, first of all, very practical, is how to do it. And second, maybe you would formulate the recommendations, because out of your presentation, one area that you stress the necessity to collaborate strongly with non-university sector in research and other is absolutely key for us, because we are quite in academic, and have insufficient connection. I know that Germany has wider connections with non-university. So how would you push it into the sector in the country level? I represent the ministry, so we can but make it disseminate this note, how to push universities to go out to other sectors.
Yeah. The original idea was about the exchange of students and was not focusing on research. Now research is also a part of these university alliances in an increasing degree, and I think this should also include partnerships with non-university institutions and the industries, the private sector. So it's the very beginning now. We can say that this is really a vibrant element of the alliances, actually. But it will be, I think. Hopefully, these alliances will be supported sustainably so that they can develop further, and they won't remain just projects. They must be organized on a permanent level, I think. And this also includes that we must enhance the number of them. Originally, they were considered as elite alliances. That's not the case now. We have enhanced the number of potential partners up to 10. And I think this is a good idea, and hopefully the Ukraine will be part of the system in the future. I very much advocate this, and maybe we can talk a little bit in detail later on a direct level. I think this is a very good suggestion, but we really must integrate the full map of Europe. It's not the case yet, but actually I've had a meeting at the beginning of the week with our ministry about the experiences with these networks. 41 networks are in place already. 35 German universities are part of it, so there was a good reason to interact and to exchange ideas. And we also talked about the integration of partners from the Ukraine, and I think this is a very important issue on the political agenda, actually. Please, yeah.
Logistics. Thank you. Nadine Zacharias from Swinburne University of Technology in Melbourne, Australia. I'd like to come back to your observations on teaching and learning and make a comment and then ask a question. Melbourne was one of the most locked down cities in the world. We transitioned, all of our face-to-face services and provisions and teaching and learning, to online provision in a fortnight. We know we can do online very well, all online, and we know we can do all face-to-face very well. Hybrid, learning, teaching and learning, and student service provision is very, very difficult, and it's more expensive, as you've said. Exactly. This has been our experience as we're sort of transitioning back to campus while maintaining an online offering. The other observation I would make, I'm Director of Student Engagement and Student Life at Swinburne, so Student Affairs to the American colleagues, and I'm the contact for both our Student Union and the Student Representative Council, and what we're hearing from our students is they don't love hybrid learning. And I am really interested in how conservative they are. So in there, so they'd love to go back to the lecture, right? And I keep saying to them, well, the lecture wasn't the best format to start with, right? And when we had big lectures, you hated big lectures, right? So why would we go back to that? So the question to you is, how do we work with our student body to sort of open them up for the benefits of hybrid learning? How do we sort of socialize models or co-create models with our students that work better for them and for us ultimately?
That's interesting because my impression is that many of our students are demanding hybrid solutions, and that this is a problem for the universities, as you have mentioned, because they have not the technical tools to fully cover the complete ground. We can offer in many universities, in Germany at least, we can offer hybrid lectures. But we cannot offer the full program on a hybrid basis. And the students are demanding that because they want to decide whether they would attend directly or not. And this would massively flexibilize their day. Definitely, this is a desire, but it's not realistic to do this. But I think there is an enormous heterogeneity, a diversity of expectations, and I think what is really important and what I'm concerned about is we must not lose the experiences of these 2 years. And there is an enormous enthusiasm. We can now return to the campus and we leave all behind what has been a part of our lives in the last 2 years. And we have learned so much about virtual tools and about the flexibility they give us. And we must take advantage of this and combine it with direct and analogous formats. And otherwise we would lose these experiences, and that would be really sad. So my impression is different expectations, but the most important challenge is to combine tools and to do this not at fortune, but with respect to didactical reasons and concepts, and then to organize each course with regard to the potential of combination and to reorganize also the syllabus of instruction. I think this is not about technical tools, it's much about the culture of teaching. And this is the real challenge in the future. And this is very costly. If you really want to do this, I think we must differentiate between hybrid and solutions and blended learning. Blended learning is quite easy, but requires a lot of didactical attention. Hybrid structures are relatively easy to be organized, but they require a lot of money. And if students want to go back to the campus, I think this is the result of the last 2 years. But in Germany, at least, many of them demand a hybrid solution. So I think we must take advantage of the opportunities which are given here. And we must also remember our teachers, our professors, that they must not strictly return to the word as it was given in former times. They must stick to new adjustments. I think that's really important. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. I was a student these last 2-3 years. So I had offline education, higher education, hybrid education, and online education, and I was part of the student council in my university. So after all these couple of strange years, we made a questionnaire to everyone to see how was hybrid, how was online, and how was offline, and it was interesting to see that most of the good experiences, it wasn't because of the methodology. It was most about the teacher. If the teacher had good grades or like good experience with the students, it didn't matter if it was online, hybrid, or offline. I feel like it's the quality of the teacher, the importance of how the education will be, and it won't matter if it's offline or hybrid or blended or anything. It's responsibility of the teacher. Just wanted to point that out because I was a student these 3 years.
Yeah. Thank you very much for this. I think a very important observation. It's not about the technical system. It's about the individual engagement and commitment to teaching as a task which is really inspiring and should be considered as the most important task in academic life. But I think this is also a side effect of the pandemic. At least in Germany, people are talking about teaching. They have never done before, or not that in that degree. They were talking about their conference experiences. They were complaining about the executive board and the stupidness of their decisions and many other things, but not about teaching in a very practical sense. And now they do. And this also will enhance quality. But I think I completely agree with you. It's about individual engagement, definitely. This is here and there.
Yep, and to follow up on that, a very small point, I have a huge problem with how most universities prioritize research for incentivization for academics and points and not teaching. And it's got to be flipped the other way. And then this effect will flow through and improve everything, the use of technology as well and everything.
Definitely. We have to readjust the system of academic merits. That's important. And interesting enough, you say this coming from a system which has the tuition fees. We haven't. So we have not the means of making pressure by tuition fees. So this is really, really complex. We need target agreements for teaching, commitments, many other things. But hopefully this will help us to really enter a new period of cultivating teaching as an issue.
Thank you very much.
I think you must speak in.
Yes, okay. So two experiences of my own teaching online when we suddenly reverted to this panicagogy during the COVID. The first one was I tried to create that sense of belonging by creating group work online, by connecting my international students who were now scattered all around the world with time differences. One thing I realized after this group work, when I asked them to write a small reflection paper on what they sensed, what they learned, was that a majority of my students said it took them out of their comfort zone, whatever that word means, and they had difficulty connecting with people that they have never seen. And they didn't have the skills and capacities to manage this situation on their own. So a word of, for me, a lessons learned is, yes, we can use this hybrid way of teaching and learning, but we need to first equip our students with the skills and capacities of managing their time, of connecting with other people online, of understanding how to communicate. Sometimes their humor, for example, was badly received by others, or their lack of contact, or not being online all the time immediately to respond to other people. So these are the things that we need to really regulate and monitor and foster. The second thing is, afterwards, when we went back to the campus, yes, I actually agree with you. There is this chance of going with online teaching and on campus. But then the online one should be something like 20 minutes, not more, of very intensive teaching of the points. And then having our classes on site, this is at least the reflections and comments that I got from my students, to bring them to campus and to talk, discuss, create projects on those items that we have, or points that we have taught. That, I think, is perhaps one of the ways we can go ahead with, to do away with long and uncomfortable lectures, and to replace them with a system like that.
Exactly.
That's what I got, so I just wanted to share it with you.
Thank you for sharing your experience. I fully agree. I think that is a very good argument for a real blended learning culture, which consists of a majority of direct interaction and the rest of virtual elements, up to not more than 20%. And this also makes students much more comfortable if they know each other. And I think we make the same experiences in our working environments. If we have a session with people we know, it makes it much easier. If we don't know them from real life, everybody might be shy or a little bit reluctant. It's not that open-minded. So the same is in teaching. And I think what really is important is to make use of this flexibility and to organize a classroom in order to also reduce size. In Germany, it is really a problem, and you can use virtual elements to reduce size and to flexibilize the instruction process much better. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Alt. I'm Julian Montaña from Colombia. I'm the Dean of the School of Arts and Music there. Also alumni of the IDCLA that you found with Rectors Conference.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. Corona has shown us that there's a meaning of life crisis in this new generation. So when you were talking about, for example, you were talking about the performance of professors. And I think this pandemic lead us to the hyper performance of everything. So professors, teachers had to perform very well, more than well, and they had to do a very extravagant effort to try to commit everyone in the rooms. And also that, well, this kind of engagement tended to a burnout, but also not only for the teachers, burnout for students also. We teach music, music theater, and for us, it wasn't possible to embrace this virtuality. Very soon in the pandemic, we had to go to the stage again, because we couldn't teach at all our disciplines by this kind of virtual tools.
Yeah, sure.
So I return to the beginning because of this meaning of life crisis, and I think we have learned in our disciplines that we must to engage with knowledge at all, because we must create this kind of love, inspirational, but also it's mandatory that the students give us the same amount of energy and compromise that teachers do in the space that we share. So maybe would be nice also to include like the humanities and love and kind of values like solidarity and engagement in order to create more functional hybrid areas or hybrid spaces in order to create like a meaningful spaces of learning. Because obviously quality is very important, and maybe platforms or the tools are not the most important things, but humanities and this kind of human values are probably something to work in order to can integrate this kind of hybrid atmospheres into our new models of education. So that's all.
Thank you for sharing with us this experience. I think the last 2 years have shown what the culture of presence means to us in different aspects, and each discipline has suffered from the situation differently. The German Rectors Conference I'm heading consists of 268 universities being members, 50 universities of arts and music among them, and they were complaining massively about the loss of authenticity and also the problems to practice in configuration. And I was impressed about the flexibility of technical disciplines, also sciences, to replace experiences in the lab. But they were also missing this team spirit and discovering certain things, observing, witnessing processes. So I think we all lost something and we're suffering from different aspects. And what we all have learned is that we have to deliberately take use of this culture of presence, because it's not given. We must develop it further. And I think combining tools, combining cultures makes the university really a lived multiversity also. Yeah. I think there was another question here. Oh sorry. Yeah.
Thank you for excellent presentation, and I really very much like the fact that, or your last point that during the pandemic there has been a lot more talk about teaching than before, and that was very touching, as a matter of fact. I come from Finland. My name is Tanja Risikko. I'm the executive director of the Finnish National Rectors Conference. One thing that I think we haven't talked very much about is the guidance and advising. And I think the pandemic revealed the fact that there is no such thing than a typical student anymore. So that people who come from different backgrounds and the individual study paths, pathways, flexible pathways and preferences, whether people want to study like online or on site. So that requires a lot more than before, individual guidance and advising. And I think when the universities are working under pressure of tightening budget, so that is a problem, or that is something that we should pay much more attention to. And I really much liked what a previous talker said about described her like students and teaching, so that really showed the form how the teaching has changed.
Exactly, I fully agree. I think pandemic has shown us that we are no longer in a situation with a coherent students' population. They have different expectations concerning work-life balance. They have different family responsibilities. The material situation is completely different. And derived from that, we have this enormous diversity of expectations we were talking about. And it's not easy to handle, to address all these expectations properly. I think this is really the challenge of the next years. But we should not continue as we did before. This is a major message, I think.
Thank you, Professor, for very interesting points. I got an idea that actually we quite a lot talk about what the students like this way or that way, but maybe you have some data of what are the study outcomes after those semesters of distance, because you mentioned a very good point. You should choose method according to didactic needs. And when you are forced into distance, that's an experiment you would not perform in real life in other conditions. So maybe you have some data in Germany?
I think, first of all, what really is satisfying, we all would have predicted that we would have an increasing dropout rate. We hadn't. So I think this is a good indicator underlining that there had been a strong commitment in teaching, even though the conditions were difficult. I think this is a good result. We haven't results about examinations, but what we have witnessed is that we have also had a new culture of examination here. When we shifted examinations to online examinations, particularly in natural sciences, the range of questions had to be reshaped because it was more or less a new syllabus of questions focusing on application, not on knowledge, because knowledge-based questions were risky. There could be fraud. And for this reason, we had a new culture of examinations. And many of my colleagues from sciences were complaining about that. But I think they have also adopted themselves to this system. So I would invite you all to reflect this in your national context, not only with respect to outcomes of examinations, but also with respect to the culture of questions, which might have changed. But I have no concrete figures about that, actually.
And about how well the students got what they were supposed to get?
Well, we have questionnaires about that, definitely. We had a lot of queries. Collect figures about the impact of pandemia on the well-being of students and also the knowledge transfer. And well, we had roughly 70% saying, well, we were satisfied with the things we got, but the rest said, well, there was a certain lack of, in most cases, authenticity, but also a lack of information. So be it the accessibility of information or the consultation structures under digitalization conditions, it's not quite clear. So I think more than 60% were relatively satisfied with the information flow and the knowledge basis here.
I'm going to break two rules because I came late, and you shouldn't ask questions if you come late. And we are past the timeline. But I couldn't resist just jumping in because I'm from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the group called JWEL. We're launching a study with brain and cognitive science to actually do A/B testing of different teaching methods with our students with resilience, their psychosocial resilience as the key metric. And we're actually going to look at not only how we teach, but how we set the intellectual and academic challenges in the work we're assigning so that we sort of hit the sweet spot of difficulty and ease. So we're trying to look at both methods, collaboration, but also difficulty and complexity of assignments in collaboration of educators and brain and cog science and psych researchers. So stay tuned. We're actually launching that right now.
Yeah.
And I think we need to start doing this kind of research and draw on our own faculty who study things like the construct of resilience in individuals as well as the collective property, which I think we still have yet to define as universities and classrooms as well. Yeah. So thank you for indulging me. I know we're late.
I think we need many more chairs for social psychology in the next years because there are so many tasks given with respect to experiences from the pandemia.
Hi, my name is Usha, and I just wanted to shout out to the fellow Australian over there in the front. I'm from Perth, Western Australia, and I do corporate training and executive coaching. And so I had to do, during the pandemic, a whole bunch of staff in both academic and non-academic at a university in Australia. And throughout that, just the 2.5 years of evolving with them, just how the program changed from face-to-face to then breaking it into Zoom, and then people were like, I want WhatsApp chat groups, I want this sort of, and then some of them, every group, basically what I'm trying to say is every group was so different. So in your talk, I thought the flexibility was such a key issue, but with resilience, as much as we're studying resiliency of students, I think the resiliency of the system is much dependent on the resiliency of the people delivering that system. So I'd love to see some studies and stats for the staff as well as the students. Yeah. If you have some of that, that'll be great to know.
Yeah, definitely. Good remark. Point well taken, yeah. This was a focus on students a little bit, but I also mentioned that the teachers were massively suffering from the whole situation. They were overburdened, and I think it's very time-consuming to organize a good virtual classroom. It's much more time-consuming in some cases than to do it on an analogous level, I think. So in particular, when you have to do with empirical disciplines, it needs technical fantasy and massive engagement to replace this direct experience on the virtual level, I think. Yeah. And there were many burnouts also on the staff side. And the staff was suffering from the lack of social interaction in many cases. And I've observed that they now were arranging themselves and adapting themselves to the situation. And now we want that they return to office, and many of them are very reluctant and quite happy with the home office. So this is another topic, I think. But it's also very important how our working conditions will change after pandemic. And I think there is also the same as you have mentioned. We have this enormous diversity of expectations people have because people are that diverse now. Okay, I think we are at the end. Thank you for this vibrant discussion.